So let's get started. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm a 30-year organizer for many causes, mostly with the Democratic Party, both here and in Massachusetts. For the last 6 years, I've been organizing parents who choose something other than their district school. And in the last year, I'm just grateful that I have a team of organizers now who are helping me do this. But we cannot do it alone. So let me talk a little bit about how this started back in 2014, 2013 is when I got started organizing parents. And I went around the state talking to all of you. And you told me what worked, what didn't, what needed to be improved. And in 2014, we introduced some legislation to help correct some of those things that you needed help correcting. Remember the rule that said you had to go back, like if you were in a school and it was working for you and you needed a scholarship, you had to go back to public school for a year? Yeah. Okay, well, those are the kinds of things that you told me about, and this legislation was designed to fix. It died second week of session, but Doug Tudhill, the president of Step Up for Students, said, keep organizing parents and we'll see what happens. So you all wrote your lawmakers, you called your lawmakers, you went to Tallahassee and you spoke with them in person, and on the last day of session ended at around midnight, our bill passed at 9 p.m. That was because of all of you, all over the state. So then, at that point, lawmakers were sick of me. They were sick of the whole thing. So there was a provision in there that said I really couldn't stay with Step Up for Students. So that was okay. John Kirtley, the chairman of Step Up for Students, had another organization called Voices for Choices, and he pulled me out of Step Up to run it. So I continued to organize parents. I just did it under a different umbrella. Couldn't be in the Step Up office anymore. We could still be friends, we could go out to lunch, but I wasn't allowed to be there. So Voices for Choices got started, and we could do some things. So one of the things we did was we took a look at 5 different school board races, 5 incumbents, very popular in their communities, who did not realize that they represent all the kids in their districts, not just the ones that go to district schools. And we had 5 candidates running against them. Now, by law, we can't tell you who to vote for, but we can tell you who supports you, who doesn't, and to get out and vote. All 5 of those school board races, our supporters won, and our opponents went home. That was because of you. Not everyone was thrilled by this. We were, but our opponents were not. So they filed a lawsuit. This lawsuit was filed by the Teachers Union, which is the Florida Education Association, along with the NAACP, the Florida School Boards Association, the PTA, and the League of Women Voters, which broke my heart. And they filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida to declare the tax credit scholarship program unconstitutional. And if they won, it would have been shut down. So we focused on that. And we took a look at all the plaintiffs. Well, the School Boards Association, they're elected officials, right? So all over the state, we started to go to school board meetings in these lovely orange T-shirts you see, right? I think the reason why I chose these, we had some hearings in Tallahassee, and a senator who hates us was up there screaming about the hundreds of parents walking around in those horrible orange T-shirts. There were only like 20 of us, so I keep getting these shirts. If it doubles or quadruples our numbers, that's a winning thing. So we started going to school board meetings all over the state, and we urged them to drop the suit. You reached out, you tweeted at them, you called them, you emailed them, and about 8 months later, they dropped out of the lawsuit. They stopped. Another thing we did was, the Tallahassee Democrat is the newspaper of record, right? It's the one our lawmakers all read, our governor reads, our state Supreme Court justices read. Well, they put out an op-ed by the League of Women Voters that said our parents are not smart enough to make choices for their children, right? right? That made a lot of people angry. I was thrilled. I wrapped it up like a present with like a little bow, and I sent it to all of you, and I said, do me a favor. Go online and tell them how smart you are, how you research schools, how you know your children better than they do, actually. And 250 of you did. You wrote blog comments so compelling, so heart-wrenchingly honest, that the editorial board of the Tallahassee Democrat came out in support of us and urged the union to drop the suit. So that's another thing you guys did. Around this time, my chairman asked me to get around 10,000 people to Tallahassee for a march. I said, okay, let's do this. So Step Up for Students and Voices for Choices combined together to get way over 10,000 people to Tallahassee in January to march for the right to choose the best school for their kids. Dr. Martin Luther King III actually came and spoke that day. Show of hands, was anybody there? Yes. Okay. Thank you. You all deserve some applause for that. That was a wonderful day where the state Supreme Court justices could look out their windows and literally see the face of our program walking right by them. And within that year, the lawsuit was dismissed. So thank you. Because of you, the program now continues to grow and include more parents and children. We got on the PTA to drop out of the lawsuit. These are all things that you all have done. HB 7069 was an important time to come together for the Gardner Scholarship and for charter schools. And that's when we started to organize charter parents, right? I reached out to so many of you and I said, hey, can you send the governor an email asking him to sign this bill? 5,000 of you did, and he signed the bill 2 weeks later. So these are all ways that we come together for one cause, and that's for parents to be able to choose a school that works for their children so their children can thrive. So we are the Florida Parent Network, right? We don't care what choice you make as long as it's a great one and as long as it works for your children. So we support district schools. We support magnet programs. We support magnets, vouchers, scholarships, virtual programs, and homeschools. Because really, we respect all options because we respect the parents and the ability to choose what works. So now we need to come together again. The legislative session, like I said, starts Tuesday. It's important that we reach out to our lawmakers and write handwritten letters. Now, I'm going to get in touch with all of you starting Monday, asking you to email, to make phone calls, to volunteer to write letters to editors. You are the foundation of this movement. You are the one who changes hearts and minds all over this state. Today, I want you to take a moment with us and write a handwritten letter. We have paper. We have people here who are going to help you with it. Because when lawmakers actually hold a letter in their hands, it's old school, it means something to them. They tend to listen a lot more when they hold a letter in their hands than they do when they get a phone call or an email. So that's why we're going to do it today. And we're going to ask the lawmakers to pass the Family Empowerment Scholarship so that we can get every kid off waiting lists and into great schools. Now, we only have a few minutes. We don't have time to really get into all the nuts and bolts of all the things that we want to discuss, so we have to narrow it down. Our opponents would love for you to discuss these things. They would love for you to talk about taxes or funding issues. They would love it if you would talk about what you hate about district schools that don't work for your kids. We can't do that, right? Our job is to be heard. And if our opponents think we are out to destroy them, they will not listen to us. You know, that wall will go up. And we have to knock down that wall. So I'm going to ask that you take some time today and avoid all of these topics. Instead, what I'd love for you to do is talk about your children. If you're a teacher or an administrator, talk about your students. Tell us why you chose this school, why this scholarship program means something to you. Tell us about your unique situation. When I go around and I ask parents why they choose the schools or the scholarships, they tell me, most of them tell me that this is a school where my child is safe. They're not being bullied, they're not being harassed. They're with teachers who love them. It's like a family. That's what I hear over and over again. So write about that today. Write about why your child is doing better in this kind of an environment. A lot of times, if our children are doing better at school and feel safe, they're doing better all over the place, right? They're sleeping better at night. They're happier. And if they're sleeping better at night and they're sitting in a classroom where they're not afraid to use the bathroom down the hall, then they're learning, aren't they? They can read better, and they can do those math problems that were a struggle before. A lot of you tell me that when you get in touch with your teacher, she calls you back within a few hours. Talk about that. Talk about how your children are surrounded by other children who support them in a loving, caring environment. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, we all want our children to do well. And we all think our children have a right to be in a place where they are supported and loved. So please, write about that. Write about why you think it's important to keep your right to choose the best school for your kids. Don't ever be shy about telling lawmakers that is your right. They have that right too. Not one of them has their children in substandard schools. So they should be able to understand where you're coming from and remind them of that. Also, it would be great if you mentioned what school your child is going to. And if it's a religious school, that's fine. But I would ask you to avoid mentioning prayer in schools, avoid quoting the Bible, because our opponents some of them are a little like me. They're not religious. They're a little scared of religion, especially in schools. So what should we talk about instead? Well, most of your religious schools have outstanding graduation rates. Kids are leaving there ready and prepared, whether it's for middle school, high school, college, work, or the military, right? So talk about that. Talk about how your children are ready to go on to the next challenge in ways the secular schools can't touch. Mention that over and over and over again until our opponents can finally hear and understand that when children are in a school that works for them, everybody benefits, right? Crime goes down, property values go up, the entire community benefits. So please mention that over and over and over again. And please, I know so many of you have really tough stories about children who've struggled in district schools, but I'm going to ask you not to bash public schools. I was a public school teacher for 8 years. I loved my students. We are going into this respecting a parent's right to choose. And so if we're asking them to respect us, we've got to respect them too. And so please do not bash public schools when you're writing these letters, or emails next week, or phone calls. As hard as it is, please just stick to what works about your school now and focus on that. A lot of times we only have a minute or two to testify before a committee or a couple characters online. We don't have time to get into all of the reasons why. So let's just focus on what works for your child, and that is this school, and tell us a little bit about that. Okay, when you're writing a letter, please be specific. Lawmakers get confused. They do. They got a lot going on. They've got to look at hundreds of bills every session. It's kind of our job to help them understand what this means. So be specific. Tell them that you want an end to waiting lists. Tell them you want them to pass the Family Empowerment Scholarship. Be very clear with them that that's why you're writing. You can also thank them for their time. Like my mother says, it doesn't hurt to be polite. Declare yourself a voter, please. And if you're not registered to vote, please make my day and let me help you register to vote before you leave here today. Okay? Please. It'll make my whole weekend. You can always remind them that this is the social justice issue of our time, ensuring educational equity for all. Liberals like me get all warm and fuzzy when we hear social justice, so bring that up often and remind our lawmakers that they should be on the right side of history. And then also, a little technical, if you could refer to it as the tax credit scholarship. If you're going to talk about Hope Scholarship or Gardner Scholarship, refer to them by those names, not step-up scholarships. We're growing. We've got lots of options for people. And again, lawmakers get confused. So we want to mention the exact scholarship that you're a part of so that they know. One of the other steps that I actually don't have up here, but I know every one of you has a phone. And so I would like you to get out your cell phone or your mobile phone and Google, how do I find my Florida lawmaker? Okay? We have lists, and everybody with an orange Parent Power t-shirt is going to come around and help you try to find who your lawmaker is. We're mostly focusing on senators today. So if you're running out of time, please find your state senator with your address, and then we'll know kind of how to help you, how to help guide the letter from there. Because some senators support you, and some senators do not. So we want to make sure that your letter gets to the right person. So feel free to get out your phone and Google, how do I find my state senator in Florida? And you should be able to get that information, plug in your address, and find out. And then we'll tell you if they support us or not. Confirm with your tables volunteer that your address is correct. Get an envelope from one of them. We will label it and mail it for you. Okay? So take a few minutes here and write out a letter. And it was filed yesterday, so it's SB 7070, the Family Empowerment Scholarship, or you can refer to it as SB Senate Bill 7070. I know you guys have lots of questions, and that's why we have lots of staff members here to help you. So we'll play some nice, lovely music in the background. I'll step down and I'll mingle as well to help. And then we'll come back at the end before we go off to the next sessions. Thank you again for being here, every single one of you. This is a beautiful Saturday, and you are choosing to spend it with us, and I cannot thank you enough. So we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everybody.